I think the men are much more comfortable, and it's part of just how society treats women, but the men are more comfortable saying, I'm trying to win this competition. I'm going in it to win it. And they don't do that in a way where they're negative towards other men competing, but they're saying, I'm going to strategize to win. And it's this friendly competition. Whereas I rarely, if ever, have heard a woman say she's trying to win a competition. They'll say, I'm trying to have a really good course run.
Welcome to the Ninja Babes podcast. I am here today with Casey Rothschild, and she's back. She's actually was on the podcast about 2 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. It's crazy. Before we dive into this episode, I wanted to tell you about an important partner of Ninja Babes. Propello Life is an all-natural wellness and nutrition company that Ninja Babes has worked with for well over a year. I love working with this company because they're family-owned. All of their products are all-natural, non-GMO, and not only do they taste great, but I feel great taking them. If you've ever taken pre-workout before and you feel like you've gotten hit by a truck or your heart is going to explode, their products are not like that. Their products are all natural. They'll give you that natural boost of energy if you're taking the Energy and Focus blend. If you take the pre-workout, you will feel that hype, but it's not the same as some of those other chemical-based companies that will leave you with dry mouth, cause you to overly sweat, and all these other weird side effects. So if you're looking for a company that has great all-natural products, they even have vegan and whey proteins, definitely check out Propello Life. Best of all, if you go over to propellolife.com and use code NINJABABES, all caps, you'll get 10% off your order and free shipping, and you'll be supporting the Ninja Babes podcast. So if you're looking for a way to get amazing products that taste great and that supplement your nutrition, and a way to support the Ninja Babes, head on over to propellolife.com and use code NINJABABES on your order, and you won't be sorry. Thanks for your support, and thank you for trying out Propello Life. Casey, hello and welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going well. So much has changed. I feel like, we came into Ninja on A&W our rookie years together, and so I've always felt very kindred to you, and I love that we could just catch up, because the last time we spoke, that was after the first time that we had both competed, and I feel like it feels like ages ago now.
I know. I feel like even at that time, I thought I sort of got what competing was about, but so much has changed since then. And then you look back on and you're like, oh, I barely knew how to do certain obstacles. And I'm in such a different place, I guess, mentally and also training wise. So a lot changes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So what's new for you in the past years? I mean, and there's so much we can talk about, and we'll hit kind of some of the highlights, but what has been kind of the change in your training, and what are you doing now that's different compared to 2 years ago?
Yeah, so I think going into the first season, so I can start there, going into the first season on A&W, I didn't train that much. I think there was the impression that I trained a lot more than I did, partially because I think they said that I had trained for she's been training her whole life for this. And in some ways, I guess I did, because I had done circus arts for 10 years. I had done track and field. So there were definitely a lot of things that led up to that. But in terms of purely ninja training, I think it was after I did the show that I started really consistently training. And this past year, I think that was the first time that I was training maybe almost 5 days a week, because I was adding rock climbing in. So I think my training regimen has changed a lot, and that has really affected how I've been able to perform in competitions, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I know looking back, you got up the warp wall that season, and it was just so much excitement, so much was happening for you. And I feel like it was this quick whirlwind of who is this girl, Casey? Tell us everything about her. So, it's been exciting to getting to know you, and we're both over here on the East Coast. And so I know we see each other now and then at competitions and stuff locally. And obviously we competed in the same region, but what do you feel like has been your thought process from that season and then the season after to now? A&W 12, neither of us ended up actually competing after COVID happened and everything happened with the recasting. What is your focus now, and what has felt like it's changed for you mentally?
The interesting thing with A&W is that I think there's a lot of people who know me from the ninja community and NNLs, and then there are people who maybe saw me or anyone, they just see the show. So from a perspective of A&W, the TV show, it's sort of framed as that my whole year or anyone's whole year is leading up to A&W. And I know for me and many of the people I know, that's definitely not true. So for me, a lot of my focus has been at these, I guess what they call the local competitions, but it feels much bigger to us with the National Ninja League and UNX, UNAA. So a lot of my focus has been in improving my mental game for those kind of competitions. And I think that happened specifically, it started the season after I did A&W. So I was realizing, okay, I'm getting really nervous before competitions. And that's something that happens to a lot of people. And at first I wanted to be like, ugh, like, I guess that's just how it's going to be. And I realized like I can accept that or I can figure it out. Because if I keep being this nervous to compete and almost, I guess what some people call like blacking out, like I'm not present on the course, it's going to continue. So I was able to, in my training, that was something I shifted in my training, try and replicate that kind of an environment. So having the pressure of doing a course run, of if I fail this course, I'm going to stop doing the course run in training. And then when I got to competitions, I felt much more confident. And I think that, of course, leads into A&W, but that's a whole different set of pressures that you get on the show versus competition. But I think definitely practicing running courses is something that I've been focusing on these past 2 years.
Yeah, that's so good. And I can relate for sure. Just the pressure of, I think even just on A&W, if you make it to city finals, like you've done it once and then you feel like the second night, oh, I did this already. But then there's like the pressure that, yeah, you did it already. So you should do it again perfectly or like do the exact same thing. And that pressure can really mess with you. I know it's been struggled for me as well in the past in A&W, but also I think a lot of my training before I got hurt was focused on how can I, like you said, like replicate that pressure or at least replicate the feeling that I'm getting that's making me nervous or that's kind of messing with my head and help myself deal with it better. What do you think has been important to you as far as refocusing and helping yourself get ready for those other types of competitions? So I know to us in the ninja community, UNX, like NNL, UNA, all these other leagues are just as important to us in a competition sense and in the way of like honing in on our skill set. So what do you think has been a valuable lesson that you've been learning as far as how to make you a better competitor in those competitions?
So I think what I did when I was feeling those nerves is I was thinking about, in any sport, people have these nerves for competition. So it could be track and field or even in a performance. So because ninja is so new, I think that there's less information out there in terms of video information, in terms of articles about it, because there's just less of us. So what I did was I looked up sort of how to deal with performance anxiety in any sport, because I'm thinking like it's going to be applicable. And one of the best pieces of advice I got was that when you feel that jittery, nervous feeling, that you can interpret that as, oh my gosh, I'm nervous. This is no good. I need to fight it and stop being nervous before I compete. Or you can interpret it as your body getting hyped up and you're building that adrenaline, you're getting ready to do something huge. And by shifting that perspective on it, I stopped getting more nervous from feeling nervous. And I've talked to so many friends and other competitors about that. And I think they've found it helpful because it's that cycle. You feel nervous and you're like, oh no, it's ruined. I can't stop feeling nervous. Now I'm going to have a bad run. And you have these thought spirals. But if you're able to perceive it as, okay, no, I'm getting hyped up. I'm ready. I'm going to run faster now. I'm like ready to go. This is that feeling that I'm only going to get in competition. Then you can be happy about it.
Yeah, I think that's excellent. It's like that idea of how do you respond to what you're feeling rather than letting those feelings overtake you and turn into anything they want to be,
Yeah.
I think that's so important. And there's something that Angela Gargano and I have practiced called CTFARs. I'm not sure if you've ever used that technique, but it sounds like it's a similar approach. Maybe. But basically it's like that concept of what's the circumstance that's happening. So for example, if it's a competition, it's like, okay, I'm at a ninja comp, CT. So the T is your thought. Like, what is my thought process right now? And how is that making me feel? So I'm about to compete. I'm starting to feel jittery. I'm starting to feel like I'm going to throw up. I think I'm really going to mess up and do bad because I'm thinking that, oh man, it's my turn. And so it's like, how does that snowball into what is the action that you're taking? And maybe your physical body response is you feel shaky, you feel like you can't really focus. And what is the result? Well, the result might be that you do poorly. But it's like when you can recognize what's going on and kind of take control of the way that your thoughts are handling what you're feeling, it's like responding to the circumstance instead of letting the circumstance just snowball. So you could take the same exact situation. So, okay, I'm at a ninja comp, I'm starting to feel jittery, but like you're saying, taking that and responding and saying like, okay, I'm feeling this jitteriness. I'm excited. I know that my blood is pumping through my veins. I'm going to use this as something that's going to fuel me. All of this excitement I'm feeling is the energy that I need to hit those steps and to like give me that strength and the energy to make it through this obstacle. And I'm going to do my best because I have so much energy. I'm focused. I'm like a million times awake right now. And just kind of like talk yourself into the way that you want to handle that energy and you want to handle what you're feeling rather than just let it overtake you.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. I think it's also a matter of why are you nervous? So some of us are nervous because, and this is something I don't necessarily experience, but I've been able to sort of ask people because you want to know if you're talking to someone, why are you nervous? Some people are nervous about getting injured on the course. But there's the feeling of nerves in terms of, okay, I'm going to be perceived as less strong or a less capable athlete if I fall on this course. Or I'm not going to accomplish my own goals. So that's more of an internal pressure. So there's different angles you can take from it. And then you kind of have to handle it from there. So in terms of the way that we're perceived, I think I struggled for a while in competitions feeling like, oh, if I have a bad course run and I fail this obstacle, then everything I've done before this is wiped away. And that is now determining how strong of an athlete I am. But then when I watch other athletes, I've seen plenty of people who I think are incredibly strong and they just trip on an obstacle, they miss. And I go, that's so unfortunate. They totally would have cleared the course. They just had a bad day. They'll have another day tomorrow. But we put so much pressure on ourselves that I think whether it's on the show or whether it's in a local competition, if we fall, I think we're a lot harder on ourselves than we are on other people.
Yeah, it's like, why would we have that grace for somebody else and not extend it to ourselves? But I think you're right. I think that happens a lot.
Yeah. I was going to say another thing that helped me when I started having that shift was, I think from what I've seen, I think a lot more men in Ninja do this. I'm not entirely sure why, but shifting towards more of a strategy mindset in terms of going to a course. So when I used to go into a competition, whether it was A&W or I guess I didn't do as much on A&W, but especially with NNL, UNAA, any sort of course run, that I would have this pressure on myself to clear the course. Because that's the thing, like clear the course, hit the buzzer. So I would approach it as though I had to clear the course instead of going and viewing it as a competition and saying, okay, this is where most people are getting to. I know about how strong everyone is. I'm going to try and go as fast as I can to that point, and then I'm going to clear the course. But if I'm going too many steps ahead and I'm trying first thing, I need to clear everything, or if I make a mistake, I've now ruined my run, then I think that it really messed with my course runs because I had too much pressure on myself to have like a perfect run or to go much further than I necessarily had to. It's okay if you don't clear every course. Not everyone's going to do that. But if you take it sort of one step at a time and you're able to take a course and go, okay, my first phase is to go really fast to the 7th obstacle. Then I'm going to take my time, I'm going to shake it out, and I'm going to take one step at a time, one obstacle at a time for the next, say, 4 obstacles. That's been a lot more effective, at least for me.
Yeah, that's so valuable, the strategy and just all that mindset work. I think I've learned most of my strategy from guys. And I don't know if it's just that guys tend to not allow emotions to overtake them as easily, and they're more able to just think about the steps of a strategy, because it's not that girls aren't capable of coming up with strategy. I mean, Jessie Graff is like one of the hugest proponents of like thinking of good strategy that I can possibly come up with. I mean, I've talked to her about strategy so many times, and so many other strong women have that strategy. But I think it's like, how do you handle the emotion and how do you clear your head in such a way that you're able to actually remember your strategy and remember where did you want to stop and shake out? Like, where did you want to relax? Because sometimes even you get on the course and you're like, oh, this feels easier than I thought. And then you don't breathe enough or you don't like take your time and then it catches up with you.
No, for sure. I think, well, part of it with thinking something's harder or easier than it is was me not underestimating myself necessarily. So now that I'm training with more people consistently, if I see, say, a guy or a girl or anyone who I train with and they do an obstacle, I know about what their grip is. So I don't go, oh no, like one person fell on this obstacle, I can never do it. I think sometimes you just have to have a little more confidence. And even if everyone falls on it, it could be your kind of obstacle. But in terms of the strategizing in men versus women, I think a big part of it from what I've noticed in Ninja is that I think the men are much more comfortable, and it's part of just how society treats women, but the men are more comfortable saying, I'm trying to win this competition. I'm going in it to win it. And they don't do that in a way where they're negative towards other men competing, but they're saying, I'm going to strategize to win. And it's this friendly competition. Whereas I rarely, if ever, have heard a woman say she's trying to win a competition. They'll say, I'm trying to have a really good course run. And I'm sure that plenty of women want to win, but because the men strategize to win, they watch their fellow competitors and they try and, okay, he did this shortcut, I'm going to have to replicate that, or I'm going to have to go a little faster. And that's how they sort of push each other. And I'd love to see women be able to develop that sort of healthy competition and really push to, I'm trying to go the fastest, and make that a more acceptable thing to say.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you could be right in a lot of ways. I also think that women sometimes, like you said, like they want to win, but they're not out there trying to be aggressive about it. Like maybe deep down inside, they're like, yeah, I want to do my best. And maybe that means winning. Yeah. So it's much more of like an apologetic like approach to winning in a sense. Yeah, but it's interesting because I know, so this past season I did not compete in NNL at all because I was recovering from shoulder surgery. But the season before that, for me in my local NNL competitions in New Jersey, a lot of times I was up against the same group of women. It would be like Rachel DeGuts, Mei Ling Wong, Abby Clark, myself, sometimes Rachel Goldstein. But it was I know I'm probably forgetting someone, but it was a very like tight-knit group of girls that was just going from competition to competition basically every weekend. And I know between us, I was always like, I know I can be right up there on the podium with some of these girls, if not winning. And so I was always pushing to do my best and win. But the thing was, I knew what their skill level was. And I knew sometimes Abby Clark was going to beat me in endurance every single time. But I knew that I had the technique to be right on par with her. So there was a lot of competitions that I was constantly getting third place up against Abby or up against May, or some of these other girls who were in that grouping. But I think that I only had that level of confidence because I trained with them, I competed with them, I knew exactly what they were capable and what I was capable of. But I think sometimes women kind of just put themselves on the back burner, like, oh, I know my skill, but I don't know who these other girls are, and they let themselves get intimidated. Or they just don't, like you say, like step up and be aggressive and say, like, I'm in this to win it, and I'm going to figure out how.
Yeah. Well, I think from, at least in my experience, and this might have happened to me a little more early on, but I would go into a competition, and no matter how many times I had won local competitions or won an NNL, if I went up against someone who was known from the TV show, I would be told, oh, I don't know, like this person did really well on ANW. And it happens to men too. I think it happens to everyone that we perceive people based off of the results of one competition. And we know in Ninja that people have so many different strengths. So you're saying that you have the ability to do these like power moves and maybe somewhat like endurance. Some people are really good at balance. And there could be a competition where someone who has the best grip in the world is not going to win because they can't do balance. So it's so much about being well-rounded. And when I started shifting towards kind of watching, I would strategize a little more. I would watch the competitors before me. And I knew most of who they were. Like I knew everyone's strengths, and I could see, okay, everyone say is falling on the 7th obstacle. That's probably like I can from people who know me from competitions, I can pretty easily guess within about 5 competitors what the obstacle to get to is. Even just if I haven't seen people compete, if I look at a course, I know where everyone's going to fall. And if I'm right about that, then I can approach the course knowing I can put all of my energy into doing 8 obstacles really fast. Now, if I didn't know that, I would be wiped out after 8 and not be able to go fast to, say, the 11th one. But if you can really accurately analyze, okay, I really just have to go really fast to this obstacle, and then I can go a little slowly after that, it makes it a lot more comfortable going into competitions. So if you think about NNL finals, what was that? The one that was in Connecticut. Most of us knew that at that point it was a race to get to the nunchucks. But if you went earlier, you didn't know that. So I think for the people who knew that, and I heard like Lebrec and all those people going into it, they knew they had to go fast. People who podiumed at that competition knew they had to go really fast through that one. Or
Right.
if you looked at A&W last year, I didn't make it to finals, but for men going to finals, I heard a lot of the ones who were placing high going, hey, it's a race to Angry Birds. And if you don't know that by now, like, you're not watching the competition. Like that's what's happening.
Yeah. No, that's very true. For sure. I could talk strategy all day. I love talking about strategy and mindset. I mean, that's so much of mindset is so much what we talk about in Ninja Babes. But I want to kind of talk about what are your goals right now? And I know that you've been working on some new projects on your own too. So I want to get into that. What's new for you and what are your goals right now?
Definitely. So right now for me, I recently graduated from college. I graduated Wesleyan the end of May. So I've been doing various things since then. So I think, of course, one of my goals is to start a career. I've been looking at various jobs in marketing. I'm in the interview process with various companies. So I want to do that. But in terms of, I guess, ninja organizations, in the beginning of September, we were able to launch a mentorship program for neighborhood ninjas. And we're really excited because we have been working on this for a while, but we haven't been able to speak about it publicly. And one of the things I'm really excited about with this mentorship program is being able to achieve one of the new missions of Neighborhood Ninjas, which is increasing diversity in the sport of Ninja Warrior. So part of that is allowing youth to have role models that reflect aspects of themselves. So whether it's a young girl having a female role model within ninja, or a LGBT youth having an LGBT mentor that can speak to them about sort of the intersections of being a ninja and also, say, being gay as an athlete. Or for POC kids, I think oftentimes in ninja, we have very white staff at gyms, and that's not always true. But for kids to be able to see someone who looks like them can be really powerful. And I think that's not something that we realize until we're in that position. So, of course, with you, with Ninja Babes, Ninja Warrior is not predominantly female. There's not as many women in ninja. So being able to have the women highlighted both on the show and also outside the show with Ninja Babes or just in competitions can be really powerful for girls. And I think the same is true of these other groups.
Absolutely. Yeah, I totally am with you. And that's why I started Ninja Babes, is to have more of that sisterhood and that highlight to the women and the girls in our sport, and to support our female community better and support some of the challenges and the things that are unique to women and girls. And I feel like that feeds right into what you're working on now with Queer Ninjas Unite, right?
Yes.
So could you tell us more about it?
Back in, I believe it was maybe June, or it could have been early July, I started with making a Facebook group. So for the past, I think it was 2 years, I've been part of this group on Facebook related to circus, and it was called Queer Circus Artists Unite. And I thought it was a really cool idea. There were a lot of queer circus artists who joined it. I don't think that people were that active in the group, but oftentimes people would be sharing various articles related to being queer or being a circus artist or the intersections of the two. And my thought was, okay, I am a queer person in the ninja community. And I know a few queer people in ninja, but I don't know many. And everyone that I've spoken to has expressed the same thing, that they don't know of many queer people in the community. So I'm thinking, okay, what if we make this Facebook group and we're able to take all these different people, whether it's kids or adults, who identify as LGBT plus and bring them together and let people feel less alone. So I made that group. We were able to get, I think, over 30 people to join the group. So there's a lot more queer people in Ninja than I knew of, or that almost anyone knew of. So now we're together in this group, and I started having people ask me, okay, well, is there an Instagram page or somewhere that we can also like see more information about this other than this private Facebook group, which is only for people in the LGBT community, because a lot of the people in the group are not out. So I decided I launched an Instagram account, and that was mainly for educational purposes. And the people following it now are not just LGBT ninjas, but they're also people who are allies of the community. And something really exciting about that is that I've been able to share information, not just relating to athletics and the queer community, but just the queer community in general. Because I think so many people from the ninja community don't know these things. And it's not because they have any prejudice necessarily, but they don't know about how to use pronouns properly, for example, or what does the acronym LGBT plus, what does it stand for? Or things like what is non-binary? And a lot of these terms, for especially for people who are older in the community or in any community, they're really new. And I think they would be supportive of these things, but the unknown, I think, can turn people off, or they can be uncomfortable or scared by things they don't understand. So my goal with this platform has been to share that information. Now, another thing in terms of queer ninjas, I think because Ninja Warrior attracts people from all walks of life, I think that's a really beautiful thing. But I think for some of the queer youth that I've interacted with, that can also be scary, because there's then people in the community who don't necessarily support LGBT people. So that's an unfortunate thing, but it's my hope that for some people who may be on the fence or maybe saying things that could be hurtful, that this page can help educate people in a way. So I want it to be accessible both to people in the community and those who just don't understand these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think education is always so important. And I think, like you said, a lot of times confusion or just misunderstanding comes with those unknowns. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also important to figure out a way that, you know, we are in a community with so many people from different walks of life. We have like people who are much older than me that I'd probably never hang out with, except for we're at the ninja gym together, or, you know, just people from all sorts of different jobs and belief systems and walks of life. So I do think, as always with our community, it's so important to preserve that community of respect and support for all types of people, and just, you know, understanding what is our common ground. And like you said, Ninja is that beautiful place that people can come together and we find this thing that we all have in common in Ninja. So it's really awesome that you're working on that.
Definitely. And I think it'd be really great going forward, because I think there's been a focus on women in Ninja from you and from the show, for trans women in Ninja to get some sort of representation on a platform. Because I think that I know there are trans youth who don't have those role models. And to my knowledge, there's not many people, trans women in Ninja. I know there are some trans men who are out and they are competing, but I think that when you have someone on a platform, so whether it's A&W or anything else, and that person goes in A&W and they talk about their experience, that a lot more people will feel comfortable either joining the sport because they see, oh, there are people like me in this sport, and that's something maybe I could do or that I would be accepted in, or just, I think it could be powerful for people already in the sport to be more out. So I think we'll have to see going forward where that leads to, because there are not many trans people in a lot of sports. So there definitely are.
Yeah, and I think that this is just me also just not totally knowing, but I know that I've read from news articles and things of people in different sports who are trans athletes, and then there can sometimes be a conflict in where do they podium, like on a men's or women's podium. And this is just me honestly not knowing the answer. I'm wondering for Ninja, how is that something that we can address as far as podium stances and things like that? And if down the line we had separate courses or things like that, like how would, you know, we might not know the answer at this moment, but I think it's a conversation we have to have, like how would we make those decisions?
Definitely. I think so. It's something that I've tried to educate myself on more recently, because I definitely have come from the previous sort of understanding that there's this large gap between trans women and cis women, that there's this athletic advantage. So I've tried to kind of understand the other side of that and see where people are coming from. So thinking about the regulations that are already in place for sports like track and field, that I believe trans women have to be on estrogen for 2 years, and that they do test levels of hormones before allowing people into sports. But especially for Ninja, because to a large degree we are gender neutral, we have women and men competing on the same course. I think if there wasn't the acceptance of trans people in the gender with which they identify, which I think would be a good thing long term, that potentially there could be a gender neutral league that could allow anyone to compete. And I think that there are perhaps many cis people and also people who are non-binary who, in the same way, say we have gender neutral bathrooms. You don't have to be trans, you don't have to be non-binary to use a gender neutral bathroom. If we had a league that allowed anyone to compete, then we could have people opt into that. So that's just one option, but I think it's something that's definitely been discussed in other sports in terms of those advantages, but especially for the kids, for trans kids. I don't think that they're taking anything away. Ninja, there's no scholarships in Ninja. I think there's less things that someone taking a podium. I think that there is much more to gain for those trans youth or trans adults by being accepted and included.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like will be talked about a lot more throughout the Ninja community and with our leadership of our leagues and, you know, the different organizations that we have in place as we continue to develop as a sport. Because there's so many things that our sport just is trying to figure out still, I think. I think, you know, we've seen that a lot, is just trying to figure out regulations, trying to figure out, you know, which league is growing fastest. I mean, I'm not going to get into all that right now.
Well, I mean, in terms of different things with Ninja, I think oftentimes that we don't discuss things until they are relevant. Right. So perhaps this will be something that when there are more trans athletes, that it'll become more relevant. But I would love to see more representation either on the show or in NNL, because I think that representation sort of breeds more representation, more inclusion. So that goes beyond, I mean, with Neighborhood Ninjas, part of that too is racial diversity within the sport of Ninja Warrior, because from what I've seen, I think maybe slightly less so now, but Ninja's still very white. And you see that across all sports where there's a high cost to train or to compete. So for example, if you look at a track and field, there's very little equipment required. And there's a lot more diversity in that sport because of that sort of socioeconomic gap between white people and POC. In America, that you'll see, say, more Black athletes in track and field or sports like that, or even previously in karate. But with a sport like skiing, or even within track and field, like pole vault, where gymnastics, where there's more cost to train, that there's less diversity. And that's not because those athletes who aren't white wouldn't be great athletes in Ninja or love the sport or really contribute to the community in some way. It's because many of their families cannot afford it.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I so love what Neighborhood Ninjas is doing, and just the effort to provide gym memberships and all those things to those who wouldn't necessarily be able to afford it on their own.
Definitely.
Do you have any other advice that you'd like to share with the community before we close out for today?
Yeah, I think specifically speaking to women in Ninja, I think something that I've realized over time in my training is that while there's a lot to gain from training with other women, that sometimes it can be really beneficial to train with other men in the sport too. And that from what I've seen of Ninja, as opposed to many other sports, the men in Ninja are very accepting of women. They're very supportive. And if I go and I train with men at the gym and I get an obstacle that they can't do, that they're the first people to be cheering about it, and they're very excited and they're able to give great advice. So I'd love to see people just train together. And even if you're new to the sport, I think that's the biggest question. How do you get started? It's just about, you sign up for that competition. There's no right time. You don't need to wait years and years. I think that's what I thought at first. I'm like, oh, I need to be like at the peak of ninja fitness to do my first competition. Just sign up, because you're never going to learn how to compete without trying it. So do a competition, see how you do, go to a gym, try some obstacles, reach out. Like everyone in these gyms, all the coaches would love to help. So just ask someone, hey, how do I do the warped wall? I don't get it. What's the technique? Why am I missing it? Or how do I do the salmon ladder? And you're going to get that support from the community. And that's the great thing about Ninja. So I'd love to see more people putting themselves out there, because that's something that I've really gained over the past 2 years since being on A&W, is really going to new gyms, meeting new people, and learning from their experience.
So true. Yeah, there's so many people in Ninja who are willing to help, and everybody has their own skill set and like their own unique approach to certain obstacles sometimes. And so there's always times that I'm like, I think I know how to do this, but if I ask my buddy over there, he might be able to give me, or she might be able to give me some sort of advice that I was overlooking, or just their technique is different and it might be better for what I'm trying to do.
Definitely.
So cool. Well, thank you for being on today, and thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared that's been going on the past 2 years and what's new with Queer Ninjas and Neighborhood Ninjas. And I just so appreciate you being a part of our community.
Great. It was great talking to you. Be strong, be you, be a ninja babe.